Okay, well, welcome everyone. So I am, as Beth had mentioned, I'm Chris Lurs, and I'm the Director of Instructional Technologies at iTechnology Services and your Schoology trainer for today. And I know just in this next hour or so, we are covering Schoology for iOS users. So does the staff have computers and iOS devices as well?
Um, our staff have computers. The iOS devices would be if probably their own personal devices if they had
Okay.
those. I have an iPhone with me.
Okay, great. Well, and that's what we're going to kind of review today. With just an hour, it'll be a little bit tight to take you through too many hands-on exercises, but I've got some set up for you. What I would like you guys to do, and if you only have your iOS devices, I'll show you on that, but we're going to have you log into a course that I've got the code up for. And the reason I'm having you do that, and let me actually pull it up. Let me pull that up. I'm going to hide this. And I'm going to pull that up on my iOS device so we can just all do that together. So one thing I want to remind you guys is, let me reopen this. One thing I want to remind you guys of is that when we do the major creation, there we go. When we do our major creation and creating our courses and basically setting them up, we're going to want to do that on a computer. We're going to want to do that so that we have the ability to organize and set up folders and those kinds of things. But otherwise, it's going to be really helpful for us. And looks like I have a little bit of a network issue, so I'm going to change this over and then go back in. So it's going to be really helpful for us to be able to do that on our mobile device. After we've set up the major pieces that we're doing. So here we go. So I'm actually logged in from my mobile device as an instructor, as you would be, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to pull up that course code for you. Now, just kind of as a way of introduction, I want to make sure if you guys, those that are in this session, if you have questions, feel free to speak up and ask them as we go. But basically, we're going to kind of go through the navigation and layout, where everything is at, and then kind of the workflow from instructor to student and back to instructor to grade. And then obviously, if you have other questions, or are there any other key things that you want to make sure are covered, Beth?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I think
So
that sounds great.
perfect. Well, if you have any other things, just feel free to bring them up. But this is my main login. So I'll come back to that course code for you here in a minute. But when we look at our main login, unlike on the web browser, we see 3 columns of materials that we're going to see. On the mobile device, there's not quite as much room for that, but those 3 columns still exist. So what I'd like to point out to you is in the upper left-hand corner, we see these 3 dashed lines. If you click on that, that will bring up that 3rd column with a lot of those other main areas and options that we would want to go into. So I can see that this is my profile. Recent activity is what we're seeing here in the center. We can go into courses, groups, and all those other areas. That's where our notifications for things happening in Schoology are. The mail icon, just like we would normally see on the browser version. I'm going to make that go away for a second. In the center, this is where we're seeing that update feed. So I do want to show you that is there. Now on the iOS device, this is not just particular to Schoology, but whenever you're in an app on the iOS device, it doesn't automatically update a change. So if I actually typed something in here, it wouldn't automatically just pop up on your screen. So one big tip for you guys when you are utilizing an iOS device for anything, whether it be your phone or your iPad, if you take your finger and like at the top of that screen, I'm going to take and click, pretend this cursor is my finger, and I'm going to drag that down, you'll see it spin, and that's going to refresh anything that's happened since I was in this screen last. The other way you can do that is you can always go to another area, let's say inside of Schoology, and I could choose to go to a course or something. And then if I choose to go back out, and here's a back arrow, and I go back to recent activity, that updates it as well. But a lot of times iOS users tend to miss out on saying, well, why am I not seeing what you're telling me I should see? Well, we just need to refresh your screen. That could be true in your reminders or your upcoming feed as well. So I could drag and pull both of those sections down, and that updates that information. So you still see right when you log in all the same main information that you might see on your browser version. Anything for an instructor that's upcoming for you to grade. For students, any upcoming assignments would that are overdue would show up here. And then down below, it's going to show upcoming assignments that they have. And obviously, as we scroll, they're able to see more. Okay, so the iOS device, even though laying out your course and adding the folders and organizing it is best done on the browser, once you've done that, adding different things is really easy inside of the iOS device. So in the upper right-hand corner, there's a plus symbol. And hopefully you guys are logged into your account and following along. But you can see here that I can also post, which means I can post an update to my students or to a group or faculty or student group or a course or anything like that. I can add assignments, I can add events to the calendar, and I can create discussions. So I can do all of those things. The one thing you cannot do from a browser version is I cannot add a test or quiz. I have to be able to do that from a web browser. But again, however, I could still add assignments, I can add discussions and some of those other interactive pieces that happen in Schoology. Okay, questions on that so far? If there aren't any, that's fine, but if there are, just go ahead and speak up. So I'm going to now hop back over to these 3 dashed lines and show you some of the items that we've got over in the left. We can see here we have recent activity, courses, groups. I'm actually going to jump down to calendar really quick just to point out the view options in calendar. So when I look at the calendar, immediately it's going to show a screen and you can see it's in blue and it says upcoming. So this, again, I could pull down to refresh, but these are upcoming assignments with courses that I am affiliated with. And in this case, I'm the instructor. So I kind of see them as a list and the dates that they're due. Now, if I wanted to look at the calendar version, to the right, you see a very subtle tab here that says calendar. So I can click on that, and that pulls up a calendar view. And what you'll notice is that any of these dates that have a dot, like the 5th and the 7th, both have a dot underneath them, that means that there are interactive pieces or even events that are on those days. Any of these dates that do not have a dot, it just means like if I click on the 20th, there's nothing on that date on the calendar. So if I wanted to look at the 5th, I can see the items that are due on the 5th. If I wanted to come up here and click on the 7th, I can see the item that is due by the 7th. So I can view that in calendar view or in upcoming. So obviously upcoming is helpful if the date is still ahead of me. But for an instructor or a student that needs to go back and see things that have happened in the past as far as assignments, they would want to come over maybe to the calendar view. And maybe if they had to go back to March or something like that, and they could look on the 16th, something that was due on the 16th. So they would be able to view that, see which course it was affiliated with, and access it from that view. Okay, and again, I could come to the plus symbol in the upper right, and because I'm already in my calendar, I can post a calendar event. The really interesting thing is because I'm in my main calendar, just like on our computer, if I were to say, I have to tell it where to post it to. So if I wanted to post something as an event for you guys, I would have to choose your course and then click out of that screen and it'll populate it. And then I would have to create the calendar event time and things like that. So I could just say training class. Now I still could post that to multiple courses. I've typed in there what this is and I could click done. And now I can see that it's there. I could still have RSVPs. I have the ability in the bottom left to allow people to comment on that post. And I have the ability in the bottom right to still attach items to that particular calendar event if I needed to. So that's what the little paper clip is in the bottom. So once I've actually put in the parameters of this, maybe I'm going to put it in as a date and I'm saying it's starting at 12:44. And if I wanted to put an end time, I could do that. And then what you're going to notice is I have to give it a title. I haven't done that yet. And so once I do, even though I put that in the description, there has to be something in the title for me to be able to do that. Now I can come up to the top right and see that there is a check mark. I have to say whether there's going to be an RSVP. I can say disabled and click out of it. Now that I've completed all the fields in that particular event, I will now see that green check mark go green instead of gray, and now I was able to add an event into my calendar. And if I refresh it, it would show up, as you can see, on the day that I posted it. So I can easily add events from my iOS device. I don't have to go back to my web browser. Are there any questions on the calendar piece? I know we have a lot to cover, so I'm going to kind of move at a little bit swifter pace, but certainly if I'm going too fast or we need to revisit something, please feel free to interrupt and speak up so that we can make sure that we are covering everything that you guys need. So I'm going to go back up in this upper left corner to our menu bar and see that we've got some other options. I do want to just point out that just like you would have in the top bar in your web browser, you have the ability here to see courses. So I could click on courses and see the courses that I teach. Anytime you're in an iOS device, again, not just for Schoology, if you see in the upper left-hand corner, I have a back arrow that helps me navigate back to those main screens. So I would also have groups. So any groups that I happen to belong to would be in there, and I could add a group, and I could go back and resources. So if we remember, our resources are our online filing cabinet for Schoology. I still have the ability to access those. So if I've posted or hosted anything in there, I would be able to access those resources as well and view them. So I'm going to go back on my dashed line. And what I want to talk about again is reminder that we have our notifications beacon up there. So if there's something that's happened, I can click on that notifications beacon. I can see those things that have happened. If I needed to send a mail message through Schoology, I could view current messages, or I could send or compose them just like we could on our mobile device. Okay, so what I actually want to do is I'm going to click back out. And I'm going to actually go into courses. And if you guys have a course already loaded and you wanted to view this in your courses and follow along, that would be great. If not, I'm going to get you into my course. I actually have 4 courses in my system right now, and all of them have a crown, which means that I'm the instructor or the administrator of that course. So I've actually created a course for you guys, mostly to show you some exercises and to provide some materials for you. So if you have not, you can join my course by using this code. Now, I'll pull it back up here in a second, but just as a reminder, if you want to join a course, as soon as you go into the courses section, like I'm showing you here, here's a plus symbol. So not only can I do this on the computer, but that's where you could click on it and you could enter the code and you could join the course. So I'm going to pop this back down and pull up that code and give you guys a little bit of time to enter that in and then ask any questions that you have so far. You can also take a screenshot of that, Beth, and then share that with others that were not able to attend the session, so they'll have access to these resources as well. Okay, so inside of this course, does anyone still need this code? Okay, if you do, speak up. I'm going to go back. Inside of this course, I just want to point out that I've actually posted some materials for you, really some links and documents and things to help you with the things you can do on a mobile app versus a browser. A workflow for like Notability, which is a common free app to have your students use, and some different workflows for teacher versus instructor versus student. So those materials I'm leaving behind for you guys to be able to to access. Sorry, I've got to get back to my course here. So I'm going to click on that to make it go away. So you can see here, when we log into a course, we also have 3 columns, but it's kind of hidden and it's kind of small here. So in the left side column, just like we have online, we have our materials, update, gradebook, attendance, and members. We have the same options that we have here. The one thing you're not going to see is that you're not going to be able to see like the course options up here. To be able to change your settings, you're going to have to be able to do that on your web browser. Okay, so I've also got the center column right here, that's materials, but I can go to updates, and any updates that my instructor that you have posted would show up in that center column. And then what's kind of cool is the right hand column. I can see right here it says upcoming in the upper right. It's kind of tucked away and I can see the icons for what's there, but it's not in my way because there's just not enough space on my device, especially if you're on an iPhone or something. That's, you know, a lot tighter space. But I can always take this upcoming tab and I could pull it out, and then I could see the full description of what is going on and what's upcoming in my calendar. And then if I wanted to make that go away, I just take it and I drag it back to the right. Okay. Also, inside of here, we see this plus symbol again. And that plus symbol, again, as we saw on the main screen, lets us add things. Inside of a course, it gives us a few more options. So the first item would be to post. So again, if I wanted to post an update to my students about my course, I could choose to do that right in that section. Even though if I add an assignment or something else like that, if I look in my materials section, it's just going to drop it down at the bottom. It's not going to file it in any of these folders. However, I still have the option to add an assignment, add an event, add a discussion, add files that I want my students to access, links and media albums, all from my iOS device. And if you haven't done it before, kind of what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of show you the assignment and the discussion. I have a few that I've already created, including a tester quiz online. And then we're going to kind of talk about the workflow and how we assign it to students, students process it and turn it in, and then we can grade it. So we're going to go to add assignment. And again, if you're following along, please do this in your course. You don't have to complete it if you've got students in your course. But what you'll see is because I'm in my course already, it's pre-populating that section with the name of the course that I'm in. I now have all of these other sections that I need to fill out. So title, I could just say, you know, sample assignment. I can go through and I can give it a due date. I could choose the grading period. And if I click on any of these items, it's going to pull up the grading period that I have. And then I just kind of have to click back off into the white space. We still have to give it a category. So we need to make sure that we have our categories created. If not, in the meantime, I'd have to put it in ungraded and then later go back and add a category and change it. But maybe this is classwork. And so we just keep going through there. I can use a scale or rubric. I could use my standard scale, whatever I wanted to do. And then under description is where I would give my description to my students of what their instructions are that they need to do for this assignment. So I'm just going to type some things there and say done. So I haven't done the due date and I haven't done the maximum points, but I would do that in order to post it. What I want to point out to you, though, is the items at the bottom. So now the items at the bottom of the screen are a lot like when you're posting an assignment via your web browser on your computer. As a reminder, and you may know from previous trainings, if it is grayed out, it's not active, it's not needing your attention. But if it's in color, it is activated or it wants your attention. So in this case, what's activated is the ability to turn in submissions. So if I deselect it and make it grayed out, then that means my students have something I'm asking them to do. However, they're not turning it in through their device. They're not turning it into me through Schoology. It's maybe pencil and paper. So I could turn that off. If I am having them turn it on through Schoology, again, I would just want to leave the submissions box on. The next item, very similar to what we see on our computer, that's going to be our availability symbol. So right now it's visible to students. If I were creating this in advance and I didn't want it visible to them yet, I could, again, deselect it and make it go away. This is some grading statistics that we could turn on, and this is the ability for them to comment on the assignment. Again, of course, we have the ability to attach things to the assignment. So whenever we give assignments to our students, we want to make sure that we're attaching everything that they might need for that assignment to the assignment. We don't want them to have to come look through our folders to find the corresponding materials to go with this assignment. We would actually attach it. So if I choose from library, what you'll see is it wants to access my photos, okay? So that would go to my photos and grab something from there. That's one big tip about the iOS device. Anything that you want to get into Schoology or any other app, having it in your photos section is going to be the easiest way to get that into your app. I could choose to take a photo or video with the camera that I have, attach a resource, is going to go to my online Schoology filing cabinet, to my resources, and I could find something in there that I had created and I wanted to attach and pull that in. So if there was something inside of here that I wanted to grab and attach, I could choose to do that. Okay, so let's say I wanted that ITSE standard, I could do that. Click the checkbox, and now I've attached it. So we can see that that's there. And again, I could choose from one other option, which is my iOS apps. So we have a lot of other apps that we might use. So I have an iCloud Drive in my case, and I can click on more. So if I had a Google Drive attached, I could say, yes, use my Google Drive. So I could go straight into my Google Drive and find the document that I needed. If you had OneNote or any other item, you could attach that from there as well. And then the last option, let me click on it, is also to record audio. So you could record audio in directly from your mobile device. So if you wanted your students to record their answer in, or some feedback or something like that, they could do that as well. Or if you wanted to record a message for them, you could do that as well. So in this case, I've attached everything. I would click the checkbox, and now my assignment is sent out to my students. I'm going to discard this one. Is there any questions about that process for assigning a homework assignment or classwork to your students via that process on the iOS device?
No questions here. It looks pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it really is, and it's pretty simple. So I'm going to actually pull up, I'm going to get rid of my teacher screen here for a second, and I'm going to pull up a student's login. Okay. All right, so now I'm on a screen where I have a student logged in. You guys are more than welcome to go through the assignments that I have there. Like I said, it's really not that critical because I just want to show you the workflow. But so I'm a student. This is a student screen now. As I come in, I see the messages from my teachers, and I see any upcoming items that I have to do. So I have an assignment out there for our course from this teacher. This one's a little more complex because it utilizes Google, but I will point out that it's very easy to do, and you can do it however you want. This particular one, when a student pulls up the assignment, the first place they're going to go to is it's going to say info, and this is going to show the instructions that my instructor has given me for the assignment. If there's any attachments, I see them here in this blue section. I can click on view attachments, and I can see where she says Expresso yourself. There's a link. So what she's done is she's provided me a link to a Google document. I'm not logged in, so it's going to ask me to log in, and then I could turn in my assignment. So for the sake of time, I'm just going to go over to the submission section. So again, it's very subtle, but I could go to the right where it says submissions. And what I will see is this student's already turned one item in, but they certainly could turn it in again. So they could turn it in from their mobile device. We'll come back to her submission, but What we see on the screen for the student is a speech bubble. So if I had questions for my teacher, I could type them in there. I could hit this plus symbol and I could type some questions and kind of have a conversation back and forth with my instructor, my professor. I also have a plus symbol. Let's see here. I also have this plus symbol in the upper right, and that gives me the ability to really just post any of my assignments in. So I could create a submission. I could again pull something from my photos or video, from my resources, record an audio, or pull something from my iOS app. So in this particular case, I would need to go to my iOS apps, go to my Google Drive, and turn in this document that I've had to mark up and submit. The students do have the ability, though, to not require any other app to do homework. There is an ability to say hit a new submission, and they have the ability to type, their answers in here. They can still save this as a draft if they wanted to work on it longer, and then when they're done, they can hit the check mark. Obviously, on an iOS device, it's going to be easiest for them if they have other tools to get a little more robust in their answer, like going and submitting it from another app, but they certainly can. And again, anything that they can get to their camera roll is really easy to submit. But I can see here on this particular device, I have Google Docs, I have Dropbox, my Google Drive, and shows that there's even more options. Now it looks like I have all of those ones turned on. So if there were other devices that would work, they would show up, but I don't happen to have any other apps loaded. So a student can use that button to turn their assignment in. So they can always come back and look at the info section up here on the left to see the instructions, and they can always go to submissions to see what they've turned in. They can see the accounting for when they turned it in, and then when my teacher's given me the grade, this is the same section that they would see the grade for that. Okay? So if there aren't questions about that, I'm going to go back just kind of full circle here, turn that one off, and I'm going to go back to my teacher screen and show you that completed workflow. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my home, and let's just pretend I've just logged in as my teacher, and I can see immediately up in the upper right that I've got submissions that I need to grade. So you as an instructor can click in that same screen, or you can click on that assignment in your calendar and see the particular items and the students that have submitted things. Now for you, because you're now grading it, it's going to take you to the submissions tab first. Again, I can go back to info and see what my directions are, or I can go back into my submissions to see my students and who's turned their items in. One thing I'll point out in this info section, you do see a couple items up here at the top. So the 3 dashed lines do let me edit or delete this assignment if I needed to. Again, the speech bubble, just like for our students, if I wanted to post a comment about my overall assignment, something I forgot to put in there and I wanted to put a clarification, I could certainly do that. I have that inside where every one of my students is listed that I could actually post an individual comment to them as well. And then a common icon that we see on the iOS device is the open in or action symbol in the upper right. So if I were to click on that, what that allows me to do is log in to Schoology via the web browser on the mobile device. So it gives me a little bit different view. I don't find that's really necessary on most of the assignments. That may come in handy on our discussions, but just so you know what it does, I wanted to make sure I brought that up. So if we go to submissions, again, this is full circle. I could click on Taylor's submission. And what it's going to do is, you remember, she turned it in twice. So at the top of my screen, it's immediately going to say revision 2 because that's the last one she turned in. If I wanted to go back and see previous revisions, I could click on that and then go click on the previous revision. This is actually the homework I had her do. And I could grade that from there. So when I have my students' revision up, you'll see there's that speech bubble. So if I wanted to have a conversation with her and leave her comments, I could choose to do that in that section. Again, I could open it in a web browser. This is the key thing that's going to be very helpful for you guys, which is our little pencil here. That's our annotation tool. And if I select the annotation tool, you'll see a whole new menu open up top. So I have the ability to click on this and I can highlight. So I could change the color if I wished, but maybe I wanted to highlight hardworking. Oops, let me go back. I could strike through. Maybe. I could write on it. I can also choose to leave a little notepad to leave the messages, and I can choose to delete that note if I wish. Now, one thing is if I've made an error in my annotations, I can always go back a screen by these arrows or go forward a screen. So it's gonna make me go back a step. So if I messed up a step really far back, I'm gonna have to go back and then kind of start over. But if I've actually made some annotations I like, if I want to see what it looks like without, I could take the eyeball and say, deselect it and say I don't want you to publish those, or you can leave it published. So it gives me that option. If I click the checkbox, then those annotations stay. If I click the close before, it's going to say, hey, do you want to discard those changes? But I have the ability to, again, mark up information for my student and give them notes right on that document. I can also, again, type in, or if I click plus, one thing that most people miss is you can use your microphone on your iOS device to speak in your response. So if I were to click here, please see my notes and make the appropriate changes. And I could hit done, and then I could click the checkbox, and now that message is going to be sent to my student. It'll show up in their notifications, and they'll see that I've given them a comment. So there's tools that are built straight into the iOS device that are very helpful that you can use for that too. And then right here with the graph, that's where I would choose to give that student a grade. So I could type it in there, or I could just drag my little cursor there. If I leave a comment in this field, this comment does show up in the student's gradebook if I choose to display it to the student. If I don't, I could leave myself a comment that just shows up in my gradebook, like allowing to turn in tomorrow for half credit or something. And again, when I make that, I always want to make sure I say save, and then it's going to save those changes. So that grade is saved successfully, and my student will then be able to see the grade that they were given. Any questions? I know we covered that really quickly, but is there any questions that you guys have for me on that particular item? Okay, I want to show you really quick. I'm going to pull up the student screen. If I show you really small over here, and I'm going to get rid of this one so we can see it in the large screen. If I look at the student screen, and if the student clicks on that graph, now you can see that they can see their grade right then and there on that particular item. They could also choose to go all the way back out. They don't have to be in that assignment. They can choose to go into their grade book, go into this particular course. And then I see spring semester, and then any grades that they have would be showing up here. So if it's classwork, I open that tab up, and they can see on assignment number 2, they've only got, 10.5 points out of 100. But any comments that I left on the grade book, which I did not leave on the grade book this time, would show up here as well. Okay, so let me hop back to the instructor's screen. And let's just talk about the 2 other items that we can add. So again, from this device, I could choose to add a discussion just like I have on my computer. The key things about adding a discussion via your iOS device, again, I'm on my home screen, so it's asking me where to post it to. If I were in my course, it would automatically know. I am allowed to enable grading, as you can see here in the center of my screen, just like I could on my computer. And then the key thing to remember when you're creating a discussion, and this is the same on your web browser on your computer, is this little graduate guy at the bottom. He's turned off by default, but if I turn him on and make him in color, you can see really quickly it said posts required enabled. And when that graduate guy is in color and he's activated, what that means is that your students have to post an authentic response to the discussion before they will be allowed to see the other students' discussion answers. So that can be really helpful. Otherwise, they can see everybody else's answer and then kind of use that as an idea to put theirs. But if we make this graduate guy activated, it actually makes them post their authentic response before they can see anyone else. And if they don't, they'll see that other people have commented, but it'll just be grayed out and they won't be able to see their answers until they've submitted. Okay, so let me pull back up, and I apologize for the switching back and forth, but this is really the best way to show you what we've got here for both screens. I'm going to switch back to my student screen and take her back to her home. And what you'll see is in this course, I did do a discussion. And she's already responded, but just so you see the view from the student, that workflow, the teacher assigns it, the student comes in and sees a discussion. I can see what my teacher's asking me to discuss, and then I would have to click on discussion to then type my response in. And I'm the only student that's responded yet, but if I click plus, I could choose to respond again, attach items, all the same things we were able to do with our gradebook, right? Or excuse me, with our assignment, I can do that here. And when other people respond, it's just going to show up as a list, and then I would be able to respond or reply to theirs. Now, it's pretty hard to reply. If I go back to info, my teachers ask me a lot of information here, and it's pretty hard to reply to all of those 5 points when I can't see them. And so this is where I said sometimes there's a way to go see this in a web browser version that is more in line with what I want to see. So in the top right of this screen, this is representative. The 3 dots are representative of like the gear wheel, like you would see on your web browser. So that's your master control, and it gives me the option to view the web version. So if I click on that and I want to view the web version, it's going to pull that discussion up in a web version exactly the way they would have seen it on their computer. So to me, this just looks a little bit better because not only can I see the instructions in the same screen, but I can also see, in this case, the rubric that my teacher attached. And then I would see any of the responses below just listed in that common kind of a little more graphical format that I've seen online. So I could, and you could even as the instructor, view that in the web version format to be able to post replies. So I could choose to post another reply if I wanted to. Just going to put something goofy in there just to show that I can post. But a student can post their replies from there. And what you'll also see is when they have that reply field, they have a few options. They could insert content. We can attach from our resources. We can attach with a link. I'm sorry, that's attach a file. This one's attach resources, and also still record and answer in. So just like the web version on your computer, there's a little more robust way to be able to see it on the iPad. And then when I've completed this, I can click the checkbox in the upper left, and now I'm finished with that discussion. And if I come back over to the discussion forum and I pull down to refresh, both of my comments will show up there. Okay, so as I'm pulling back up the teacher's view, are there questions about that workflow process so far with like a discussion? Okay, so I'm not really sure why. Well, I do know why. I put that discussion out there and it's not showing up in the graded section because I didn't make this particular discussion a gradable discussion. So that's why it's not showing up here to be graded. However, I can come down to discussions down here And I can click on that. And as the instructor, I can see, again, the discussions and the responses here. So I could choose to click on this, and I could choose to, if I chose to grade it, this is not showing up because I did not enable grading. But had I done that, it would enable my rubric and I'd be able to grade that from there. So I have that ability. I also have the ability, just like my student did, to be able to view that as a web version, see it there, and grade it in that functionality as well. So I could come down here, I could click on this particular item, and I could click on my rubric, and I could choose to mark those particular items on my rubric and save. And if I post to one of my students, it's posted it to all of them. So I have that same ability with the discussion as I do with my assignment. Questions about that? Okay, so the last piece I want to show you on here is with a student with a test or a quiz. Now again, I cannot, and it looks like it's logged me out here for a second, so if you can bear with me, I'm going to log this student back in, and I'm not sure why they logged him out. But as I'm sitting there trying to do this, one thing I'll point out is that the student has the ability to, they obviously can use the web browser on their mobile device. They also can use the app. And I would find that most of the times our students are going to use the app. So I apologize. Let me pull this back one more time and let me get this student re-logged in. And of course she's going to fail because I keep typing it in wrong. The joys of technology. Okay, so let's see if we've got her in there now. So I've got my student, and let me try one more time. There we go. Looks like it's going. So I apologize for that. So my students logged into their app in this case. Again, I had to create and assign this test for my students via the web browser. I cannot create that on the mobile device. It just does not have the functionality, I guess you'd say, to be able to do that. So we want to make sure that we are processing that correctly. So for the student, or if you guys chose to do that, I would just select, again, this is my student's view, I would just select that particular test or quiz. I've already submitted it twice, but I could come back to the test tab, and that's where I would still actually see the test. And as the student, I can go through and see all that my teacher has posted for me. And you can see there's a lot of options. I can watch a video in here, those type of things. One of the options that you have available to you on a test or quiz is to be able to allow your students to record answers. I have found that to sometimes not really work well. Like I turned that option on in this case, on the iOS device. So if you think your students are utilizing iOS devices, you probably want to stay clear of having them record their answer in. It just doesn't tend to work on the iOS device at this time very well, but that's something you certainly can test out. So this student's already taken this test, so I'm going to actually just, for time's sake, exit out of it. But I can see that this test has, I've taken it and I've submitted it. And so as a teacher, when the teacher comes in and wants to grade it, again, this is my teacher's view. I can go straight to that test, and because students have already taken it, I will see my full list of students. So I see all three of you, Helen, Beth, and Elizabeth. It does not show any submissions for you or any attempts because you have not begun that. However, it does show that Taylor has tried, and it shows that she's taken 2 out of 3 times. So that third attempt, even though I did not complete that test, it's still registered for Taylor that I attempted it. And when was the last time that that student attempted it? It was at 117. And if I wanted to click on view attempts, what it's going to do is it's going to bring up all of the attempts that that student has submitted that test for. And I can see the 2 in blue are pending review for me to grade the questions that were subjective. I can also see that this third one, she got in there, but she's never completed it, and so it didn't record anything. I could come to the gear wheel here and just delete that third attempt by her because it was really an error. And I'm going to help her kind of clean that up. And to grade any of these, I could choose to go and say view and edit. And then I would be able to see that student's test. And I can see that Schoology's already graded the answers that are acceptable and that are finite answers. And then anything that is a subjective answer that I need to grade, I can see that it will give me the option. Like in here, there's an asterisk. I would need to grade that to see that they have done it correctly. And I would just click on that, enter the point value, just like we would on our online test. So even if I just click on it, if they get 0 points, by clicking on it, it's automatically going to fill it with a 0 and I can change it back. And just like in our online grading for tests, every single one of these items I could actually add a comment to each individual question or give them some feedback. So there's the results of that submission. Now there's some quick changing tabs that I want to point out. Under submissions, I can tab just between her 2 submissions of that test. I don't have to go all the way back out. I can also hop between my students. So if I clicked on Taylor's name here, if someone else had taken that test, my whole list of students that have submitted it would show up here, and I could toggle between the students that way. One key tip about the tests and quizzes, whether it's on your iOS device or whether it's on your computer, certainly I can view it by student as we are here in black, and I can grade their whole test. However, if my assessment has a lot of answers that are already pre-graded for them because they were finite answers, maybe I'm in a hurry at this time and I just want to view it by question and grade the ones that are subjective. I would submit to you that the second option that's up in my screen that says view by question is a much more efficient way to grade your assessments. So I can see right here that these have already been graded, and I could click on see stats once my students have actually taken it, and I could see how my students did overall. I could also, let's see, it's not going to really pull it up here in the app, but it would in our browser. But I could choose to click on view responses, and I would see everyone's response for just that one question. So if I wanted to see how they did on that question only, I could go and I could view that and I could grade them there. Now, if I wanted to go back and say view by question, and I scrolled all the way to the bottom, and I know that this question 10 is subjective because it tells me that right there. Again, that's where I could choose to view that in one screen and actually respond or grade every one of my students' answers just to that one question all in one thread. So it's a little easier to, I guess, see and manage that in one screen. Okay, so again, I can view it by question, which lets me view each individual question, and I could choose to view it by student, and then I would see my students, and I could choose to populate their grades or any information like that. And again, it's automatically, once I've finished grading that test with those last few subjective, it's going to populate that information into that section. Any questions about that? We've kind of covered very quickly all 3 of those. Any questions about any 3 of those interactive pieces in that workflow?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay, I'm going to go back. I want to hop back into the assignment really quickly because I forgot to really show you something in there. It's hard without a lot of students in there, but I do want to point out I'm back in the assignment, and if I go to submissions, just like I hopped between students before that I was grading, so if I click on Taylor, and I want to change revisions. I showed you that you can change and hop between her revisions here. But over here where the student's name is, that's where you could also hop between students. So this is considered a student switcher, is what Schoology calls it. So if I wanted to go look at what Helen submitted, I could click on that. And if I wanted to click on that again, I could go down and see Beth. So this is where you could just stay in the same screen and hop between who you're grading. So that can be something that's really helpful for you.
That's nice.
Okay, yeah, and it's there's a lot of those quick little jumps within the iOS device that allows you to do. So just kind of as full circle, I want to show you if I click on my left screen and if I go down to grades, certainly I could choose the course that I wanted to look at the grades for. I do want to bring up, I would pop open, like just touching on that, it would pop open the categories that I have chosen and any of the assignments that are in there. Now, if I wanted to go to, let's say, assignment 2, I could, again, click on it. It's going to bring up all my students and their grades. Now, you notice that there is there's an edit button in the upper right. So if I click on edit, what it allows me to do, if it allows me to give you guys your grades, I could actually grade it right in that screen. And then I could click the checkbox, and now I've added all those grades. What it does not allow me to do is I can't, if I clicked on Beth, it's going to pull up that grading toggle again, and I could also put comments in there. But what it does not allow you to do from the iOS device is like click on this assignment and have it take you to the details of that assignment, like your gradebook on your browser does. So that's just one thing I want to point out. Certainly I can do that through the calendar or through my materials. But what your gradebook on your iOS device does is it does allow you to come in here and quickly grade. So if I wanted to come in here and give you guys grades on, again, that discussion, I could pull up this one I utilized a rubric for. So I could actually give that grade. With rubrics, we kind of have to do those individually, unfortunately, because it's a rubric and we have to click in each one of those boxes. So I could come in here and do that for each of my students. I want to hit the checkbox in the upper right, and then I have to go back to find the next student. So it gives me the ability in the gradebook to do grades quickly and very easily. It also, if I actually go back and just go into my course, I don't know if you guys are utilizing it for attendance, but I just wanted to point out if you were, just even for your own needs, you'll see that as soon as I click on attendance in my course, it will automatically mark every student there. And then if for some reason they were late or they were absent, I could keep clicking in that box and make it the appropriate symbol and click Save Changes. So you do have the ability really quickly on the fly to grade assignments, to post updates, to even create assignments if you wanted, to communicate with your students all on your iOS device without having to go back and carry your computer around. So this is really nice and easy. You know we have this, we have our phones with us to be able to access the materials, communicate with our students, and get some of our grading done instead of being tied down to paperwork or our computer.
Yeah, we actually have on that, we have an instructor who plans to, he's out assessing students a lot. They're doing a lot of hands-on activities. So he's planning to use, the iPad app to do grading for attendance, and then even for, to assess that the students are getting the competencies that they need. He can grade them right there while he's watching them do it.
Yeah.
With the app.
Yeah, it's perfect. And you can access all of that. And you can come to the member section. You could see the members that you have, and I could go and click on my members, and I could see their profile or information, and I could send them a message or something like that. So it does give you that great access. So I'm glad to hear that you've got an instructor that's doing that. And I just think that the more you guys kind of play around with it, feel what feels comfortable and what doesn't, you certainly can launch a web browser on your mobile device as well. So on your iOS device, I could launch Safari and I could just go to your URL and log into your Schoology account that way. I have a little bit more functionality on the web browser than the iOS app, but not still the same full functionality that I might have on the computer version of the web browser. So again, these documents that I've kind of left for you guys will kind of differentiate some of those pieces for you. But I think that you're going to find that this is going to be really, really easy and helpful for you guys to be able to do some things on the go. Definitely post updates to your students and kind of do your daily business in a very easy fashion.